to have you here.
Asante, it's an honor to be here. Capital FM is legendary. So to be here is, something we really look forward to. So thank you for having me.
Amazing.
Man, it's tough that we have to have you here when the discussion is the kind of discussion we're having.
Yeah.
But at least now you get to experience the company, the myth, the legend, which
Of
is known
course.
as Capital FM. And we will definitely hope you feel welcome now. First and foremost, may I just get your opinion, your take on everything that's been transpiring, and we are talking right now, of course, the death and the situation that has arisen following the death of Albert Ojwang. Murder, actually.
Sad, disappointing, angry. It's everything in one, and you just can't fathom how a country that claims to be democratic, claims to have one of the best constitutions in the country, claims to be sending its security agencies to other countries to promote peace, would be in this situation. It's absolutely shocking. And Kenyans are very right to be very angry at what's happening. The responses from the authorities yesterday in Parliament, shocking. Still sticking to their scripts, defending, some of these individuals who are responsible for what Kenyans in general are going through. So, I sit here today, this morning, and I'm like, what's happening in this country? It's like there is no leadership. Absolutely, we are leaderless. And it's really appalling to find ourselves where we find ourselves today.
Sorry, just a quick reaction to some of the leaders and what they have been saying recently, which has broken my mind. Is first and foremost, a leading mind I felt came up with a tweet on the 10th of June. If I killed Albert Ojwang using police networks, then blamed it on the DIG Lagat, who would defend Eliud Lagat? He has no rights. Why? We have made up our minds. Do not confuse us with the facts. If I killed Ojwang and we push for #arrest Eliud Lagat, the killer would walk free. True. Return reply to that was Esther Passaris, who then said, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was the Deputy Inspector General, Eliud Lagat. If I were, I was with the Deputy Inspector General, Eliud Lagat, during a Kenya Alliance of Residents Association meeting on Sunday when the news broke. He was completely out of the loop. His composure reflected genuine surprise, not that of someone aware of, let alone involved in, the death of Albert Ojwang. Let the investigations be thorough and impartial. The real perpetrators must be brought to book, not scapegoats. Now, that irked a lot of people. One of them happens to be another leading light, Willis Evans Otieno, who replied, you sat next to the Deputy Inspector General and thought his surprise face was proof of innocence? Madam Retard, Albert was tortured and murdered under his command, and you think you're giving us insight? You're not a witness, you're a prop, a cheap one. Save your makeup, your moral theater, and your stupid captions. You weren't there when Albert screamed. You didn't hear the zip ties tighten, but here you are, clumsily shielding power with your perfume-drenched stupidity. Madam Retard, you're not just ignorant, you're offensively irrelevant. The only thing more embarrassing than your tweet is the fact that you thought it mattered. And we're not even coming into Karen Nyamu and what she insinuated. Like you say, what is going on with our leaders?
I think it's really, it shows the caliber of leaders we have in this country. Sycophants who would support anything that comes across to them as being in support of the government of the day. We have a situation, or we find ourselves in a situation where people feel that they owe allegiance to individuals, to institutions, more than the people who put them in those office. They have zero respect for the rule of law. They have zero respect for the Constitution. And to them, what matters the most is that they look good to the eyes of one individual or a few individuals. And it matters not what the rest think of them. And that is why we're saying this country needs to change. We need to save this country from, the pitfall we find ourselves in. And it can't happen if we continue sitting in our boardrooms and, other places, we have to go out to the streets. That's why we fully support the call, the demand for people to go out to the streets today and to ask that these individuals be held to book, because enough is enough already. We're losing too many lives, particularly the youth, to this system that is not delivering to Kenyans.
Absolutely. That is, those are the thoughts, the early thoughts of Hussein Khalid, who is the CEO of Vocal Africa. And now he is joined by the one and only president of the Law Society of Kenya, Madam Superb herself, who's been on the forefront along with her members fighting for people during the abduction era, during the Maandamano times of last year, and defending them, coming and getting them out of police stations and just representing them in court. You guys have done quite an amazing job. It's an absolute honor to have you here, Faith Odhiambo.
Thank you.
All right, so we got his thoughts on everything today as it stands. Let's hear from you.
Well, I'd say that for the first time yesterday, I was quite proud of our Senate as I watched the proceedings, them actually debating the issues and raising concerns, some calling for the Deputy Inspector General to step down, and others asking hard questions of the law. And first, let me say it's good questions, but a little too late. And I hope they now sit down and actually think of repealing certain sections of the Cybercrimes Act, because in 2020, the courts nullified over 24 statutes, including that law, because it hadn't been presented before Senate. And they were given 9 months to review the same. And in in a record time, they reviewed and passed that law, and it became the law. They would have repealed those sections, particularly 24, which are part and parcel of the reason Mr. Ojwang is laying cold today at the mortuary. Because these are the fears that the Law Society had alongside the Bloggers Association and other institutions. We went to court challenging those provisions. We didn't find favor at the High Court, and we are currently now at the Court of Appeal. And the reality is these are situations that could have been stopped by these same parliamentarians that are now asking those questions. Yet the time they had the opportunity to review that law and set the record straight. And I was happy when the CS Murkomen was saying that we passed this law when I was here with you in Senate. And now you're asking these questions. The reality is, where were they when they were passing that law? Didn't they read what they were passing? Now we're in a situation that I hope they're enlightened to see that they need to look at that law and change those provisions of the law. Because today it's Mr. Ojwang who is dead. Tomorrow they could fail to sit in those Oval offices, and they'll be the ones facing that same fate, and the rest of the people of Kenya. Now, for certain leaders, in the careless statements that they make, I would say that instead of trying to find favor with the powers that be, ask the good, hard questions. And if you believe that an individual is innocent, why can't you ask questions at the right places to ensure that proper investigations are done? You know, I'm quite disappointed with the IPOA chair, because he's someone I know personally, and he was the first to give a presser with the IG, and now when they had questions before Parliament, he was missing in action. And to be honest, I'm quite disappointed in that action, because if there's a time we need to see leadership, and particularly from him, it's now, because this crisis is a crisis that IPOA must take head on. And we will not allow them to give us excuses. We expect hard answers. As well as to the members of the public, one thing I would want to say that, yes, we are angry. Yes, we have the right to, and we must be angry. We must ask for accountability. The only thing that I sympathized with is, I think I saw it on Twitter yesterday, the trolling of the DIG's son. And I want to say that as much as you're angry, put yourself in that boy's shoe, because we had Gen Zs who came out against their own parents, who called out their parents and said, you're the reason our country is in this situation. And so when you attack him at an individual level, maybe he shares the same anger as the rest of the people of Kenya. You are separating and creating hate, and that's not the kind of power that the Gen Zs brought us to. The Gen Zs were classless, they were leaderless, they did not have political affiliations, they were based on issues that they wanted to see changed in our country. The only thing that I say is that let us face the bull at its horn and direct our anger to the rightful persons. Let not have collateral damage that will spiral hate in our country instead of us coming together. The death of Mr. Ojwang and the sorrow that the father feels is the anger that we should channel to the right places and demand for changes. Central Police Station has been a hotspot as well as Kamkunji. It's high time we demand that we see changes. We'll not allow PR, will not allow storytelling. Let us have changes that are real, that are tangent, that will last the test of time.
You know, it's a good thing that we've actually gone in that direction, because we've seen very contradicting reports as far as Mr. Ojwang's death is concerned. The first statement that came from the police force, then the second statement, then the of course, whatever it is that they said in the Senate yesterday, giving apologies. And I'm seeing a lot of troubling aspects as far as this case is concerned. What are some of the things that, as a legal fraternity, you're looking at? Because again, we are washed down. There's so much information out there, but what are the aspects of this case that you're actually looking at?
Well, we were not able to see the scene as it was, but we are looking at when were those OB entries done. Because there are contradicting statements now coming out, even from the OCS, the head of DCI threw the OCS under the bus, but he's come out guns blazing as well and saying, no, I'm being used as a scapegoat. And so we want to know when those entries were made. Who are the people who picked him and at what time? When did they bring him? At what state? And we laud the Doctors Association for also coming out strongly and commending their friends for refusing to accept a dead body. So it means the statements that were told to the people of Kenya that he was rushed to hospital are not true. So it means he must have been dead by the time he left Central Police Station. So who are the accessories? Who witnessed? Who are the police officers at that particular time? And that's why we have been insisting. Want to know each and every officer, because some might end up turning to be state witnesses because they can be used to uncover, the same way in Willie Kimani's case, some became state witnesses that helped uncover and unravel the attempt to cover the entire murder. And you know, the post-mortem report and the beauty of having independent pathologists was quite good because they were able to fish out and discover a lot of things. You know, they would have argued that he hit his head on the wall because of the injuries on his skull. But the fact that it was on different spaces on his head, you can't argue that I went and jumped, hitting my head at the back, then at the side, then at the front. You know, naturally your body reacts to self-preservation. So after the impact of pain, you wouldn't do it again. And the strangling marks were also quite good because it helped show that they were actually trying to finish him. And the defense marks. So we'll be looking at from the point of what was picked up at the OB and what time those entries were made. And because they ought to be sequential, we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at the post-mortem report and what it comes by. And we want a chronology, all the officers that were involved from what point to what point. Because that's the only way we'll unravel the truth. Because at the end of the day, yes, as you mentioned at the start, also the DIG has rights. And he also deserves a fair day in court if he's presented as well in court. However, what we're demanding is that there's transparency in that process. And that transparency and us looking at the trail of events will be the ones that will help uncover. Because even if they tried to cover certain things, the story doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, it won't fit. And it's coming out even from the post-mortem report that in event, these injuries substantially show, first of all, that he was murdered. Now the next question is by who?
By who?
And so the by who can be answered by those who were there when he was brought to Central Police Station, those who brought him to the police station. Those are the nexus that will tell the story of what actually happened to Mr. Ojwang.
What are there any troubling aspects of this case from a legal standpoint where you look at it and go like, this will be a problem if we are to successfully pursue this?
Well, This is under investigation, and my apprehension in sharing with you anything is because I'm be giving information to the police to cover their
Correct.
tracks.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I allow
Makes
me not
sense.
to
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
that.
Makes sense.
But
We
you see,
don't want
also
anyone
as we're
covering.
talking about investigations, my concern then becomes to everybody that has been named in this, including the DIG himself. There would be concerns around him interfering with the process of investigation as long as he's still in office. What is the LSK pushing towards? What is the human rights side of things pushing towards? Of course, him stepping aside. What are we looking at in that kind of
Scenario.
Yeah.
Ideally, the law doesn't provide that he immediately steps down or he's suspended from office because he's not interdicted. However, that's why LSK was pushing that he's separated from this investigation in any manner, that the IG takes responsibility to ensure that the investigations are under him and that the DIG has no influence whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to balance the both competing rights.
Yeah.
But it's quite important that he's not involved in any manner, does not have any access to the information that is being collected, so that at the end of the day, there's that feel of fairness and accountability on the part of the police to also gain that public confidence. And it also, if he's vindicated from the process, then it looks fair if he was totally out of it. If he gets involved in any manner, automatically the entire process is tainted.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, listen, we'll come back to Faith because we also want to talk about, how do we phrase it? The standard procedure in law, especially in custodial law, when someone dies in custody, like is the case with Albert. But I want to talk to you about what we've just heard. Albert, so he has head injuries, multiple head injuries, obviously, not smacking himself against the wall. We also have a situation where there's soft tissue damage, there's signs of being strangled, signs that he was fighting back, fighting most likely for his life. How big of a dent does this put not only in the police as a unit, but the state in general, keeping in mind from a human rights perspective, the president of this republic has not said a single word about this, which is numbing to a certain extent. Hajatoka, hajaikashif, as in there's absolute silence. And when the CS Murkomen was actually being interviewed, when he was in front of Senate, he did very little apart from saying, yes, Lagat does deserve a day in court. Yes, they are going to pursue this. But then again, at one point, it just turned back to Sisi, Tunaonewa, Tunaingiliwa. What is running through your mind as you watch this, Khalid?
I think yesterday the president did speak, and
did he?
Yeah, and he did mention that police officers who engage in crime, must face the law and stuff like that. So there was a statement from him, and there were also allegations that he spoke to the family and stuff like that. But back to the post-mortem, I was present during the autopsy of Albert, and it was very clear just from looking at the body. You have injuries in certain parts of the body, and you ask yourself, how does one even hit himself under the armpit? Just under the armpit, there are injuries there. So you even wonder, even if you tried yourself,
it's not possible.
It's not possible. You have injuries all over the body. You have defense marks, on the elbow, clearly indicating someone was torturing and he had to defend himself.
Yeah.
As the president has said, all over the head, even on top of the head. So you wonder, how was he even running to the wall? You have a huge gash at the back.
Oh, goodness.
A huge gash at the back, yeah? And then you ask yourself, did he run backwards? How do you run so fast backwards
that
you hit yourself that bad? So from the injuries you could clearly see there is no way a human being would be able to cause such harm to themselves all over in a cell by yourself.
Yeah.
It's absolutely impossible. And I think the evidence since yesterday and what was presented before Parliament with the IPOA confirming that the CCTV cameras were tampered with, and they didn't get all the footage. These are very clear evidences that we can now use. And for me, there's too much talk. There's supposed to be action by now.
Correct.
Had it been you or me, you know, just a normal Kenyan accused of this, heads would have rolled a long
Heads
time
would be
ago.
rolling.
You know, and we are here now still talking. And you have these senior security officers defending what has happened in parliament, you know, and some of the leaders also, you know. So for me, it's really, I think the word is appalling that we are in this situation, and we have all the evidence that we need. This Masengeli, as the president has said, yes, there is no specific law that would, but you know, you are a senior officer and you have been adversely mentioned. You are the complainant. You know, your boss, IG Kanja, stated that the complainant is none other than Eliud Lagat. That's where the ball started rolling. You've been mentioned. It is so, you know, like, should be
Bit obvious.
automatic. You step aside so that you allow for investigation, so that whatever outcome we get from it, you can come up and say, I did not influence it. How do you even imagine that you want to remain in office? Even before we go to what action should be taken, you have been mentioned. You are the complainant. How do you still want to remain in a high office that definitely can influence the investigations and everything, and you
even
feel
interfere.
that it's okay? I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
And that's the problem.
And this is why Kenyans are angry.
And that's the problem right there, Faith. I know you're saying there's no specific law that requires him to, but surely there's something that can be made to happen. There's something that can be done because, like Filari said, like Hussein has pointed out, he is in a position where he can influence. Right now we're hearing police people being, this has been interdicted, this person has been... But when you were the person who was there, the complainant standing next to the IG, as we hear false lies that this man killed himself by beating himself against the wall, that he didn't die at Central, he was rushed to the police. When you're standing right there as the second in command, listening to your boss lie to your face, you cannot expect Kenyans to be silent. You cannot be expected to stay in that office. Something has to give.
Well, those are the demands that have been made of the Inspector General, and so that's his responsibility to the people of Kenya. And I saw yesterday in Parliament, senators also raising the same and demanding answers from him. And I think if it wasn't for them being summoned, then they wouldn't even have made that apology, which is quite sad because it took... the noise that several people made for it to get to even a situation that they decided to even interdict. Because initially they gave the statement and that was it. And I also say the spokesperson owes the people of Kenya an apology because
Absolutely.
they came out strongly to give that statement. So they must, in the same fashion, come out and give an apology to the people of Kenya for lying. And you know, those are also part and parcel of people that should be held accountable because you're holding an Oval Office. So when you make false statements, the question is, as a state officer, what does that mean? And so you were asking me that you wanted to come back also to the question of custodial, what happens.
Yeah.
And so there must be immediate notification of IPOA. So you remember as he gave us the false statement, the IG said that they have notified IPOA and we saw the chairman there. And then there has to be forensic analysis of the crime scene and post-mortem done by independent pathologists. And I think how many were they? 6? Five pathologists were there. So apart from the government, there were also independent pathologists to analyze the process. And of course, they have to agree on recommendation and the report and suspension of the officers that have been implicated. And that's why we so fast they were being indicted. And I say sometimes there's some level of dishonesty because if we hadn't demanded that we wanted to know the names of those particular officers, we would have never known who are the individuals who are being, and that's how the PR and the games start. And now there's also further demand that we want to know all who picked him up because they should be part and parcel of those indicted because of also the conflicting statements. They also must be indicted as well. And an inquest or prosecution, but I'm saying as a Kenyan, as the president of the Law Society, we are not accepting an inquest. There must be prosecution because inquests historically in this country have been used as a ruse to lie to the people, get your hopes up that something is being done, but that is just a cock and bull story. Nothing will be done. And so we are saying we are not allowing for an inquest. We demand for prosecution. The Director of Public Prosecutions already gave directions to IPOA to hasten the investigations. We want to see a report. We want to see officers presented before court. As a law society, we will also give advocates to watch brief and support the family of the victims. But we are not going to agree to any story of inquests.
And what if they say no? What if they don't?
We will demand. Or there's private prosecutions that we can still demand for private prosecution. But people have the right to also come strongly against those decisions. In the heart of what is happening in this country, I don't think it's advisable for the government to, at the heart of after lying to people, to start going through roundabout.
Yeah.
There is no time for games, and as even Khalid has said, it's time for action. We've been talking too much, and the action is prosecution. There's no other action.
Interesting. As I sit here, I'm thinking, as a Kenyan, is there any chance we could get together and literally create a class suit of sorts to force the government's hand in setting this thing in motion and actually going through?
We can sue. That's private. That's under private law. We can sue for compensation for the family. And ideally, the government should compensate the family even before suit, because this Mr. Ojwang was in police custody. He was under the custody of the state. And the state had an obligation to protect him because he's innocent until proven guilty before a court of law. So as is, Mr. Ojwang was executed in state custody because he was still innocent until proven guilty. Our courts had not pronounced themselves. They cannot be the investigator they bring you and make the decision and also execute you. So at that particular point, he died an innocent man, as is. So those were allegations made against him, and they stay as allegations.
And just to add to what she said, the individual who was arrested to get apparently in the same matter, Kevin, was released.
Yes.
No charges. So if what happened didn't happen, presumably Albert would be free by now, because they were arrested over the same issue and not charged.
Khalid Hussein, Vocal Africa CEO. We're talking to the president of the Law Society of Kenya, Faith Odhiambo. Here's an interesting one for you. I love that statement. He was innocent. He was supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. That's the rule of law. Meanwhile, calls coming from you, from other Kenyans of sound mind, and from the government saying that, hey, y'all take it easy on Lagat, give him a chance because he's innocent until proven guilty. But for Albert Ojwang, he was dead before he was even innocently proven guilty or otherwise. He was just dead on arrival. So it's really hard not to see where Kenyans are coming from. And it's really understandable the kind of anger we are seeing. But it's not anger just phased towards or pointed towards the government. I have a random question here. Just recently, this morning, I saw Capital FM, our website, which you can visit, capitalfm.co.ke/news, and you'll see a story there on Safaricom PLC distancing themselves from claims linking the company to the arrest of late blogger Albert Ojwang, who died under controversial circumstances, killed under controversial circumstances while in police custody. Can I just divert our attention slightly there? Because it's not the first time Safaricom has come under fire. It is not the first time Safaricom has been accused of giving out locations and data information. First and foremost, legally, is that covered in the Data Protection Act, or are we just up for grabs? Do the government or the police need a warranty in order to receive that information, a court order possibly to receive that information from Safaricom, or are we just sitting ducks and Safaricom and other telco can do whatever they want, which, by the way, they have denied, allegedly saying it is not them. But Kenyans from around the world, from around the country, including some who were on X during the abduction time, they were saying, listen, walikuwa najua mali niko, nikazima Safaricom namba yangu na siku wanapatikana, left the phone and you couldn't find me, but every time I turned it on, I was at risk of being caught, and they call and they'd find out where we are. Are we exposed? Are we being protected by laws put there to protect us? which is ironic because the people who were supposed to enforce those laws are the ones who are being blamed for killing Albert and many others.
Well, we are protected under the Data Protection Act and also under the Constitution, right to privacy. And police must get a warrant to be able to access your information and access your location. And though the DCI have also their own apparatus and how they can locate you as well, but they must do it within the ambit of the law. So the reality is, under the law, we are protected. And one thing that I normally say is multinationals, even if they can escape prosecution in our country, they have a parent company. And I dare say a good case example is Tigo in Tanzania, where they're actually being sued in the UK because of sharing details of Tundu Lissu while in Tanzania. That led to his arrest, and one of the employees leaked that information that has led to the current prosecution. So as multinationals, that's why you're seeing that statement, because they have a high onus and they know the repercussions of what could happen. And so if that is something that even, and I remember it a lot during the Gen Z protests, there was a time, particularly after Denzel had been picked up, because Denzel was at Parliament, he left Parliament, he went home, his friends saw him, then he disappeared. So people were like, he was traced and picked. And people were saying that everyone who was within the vicinity was being picked up. And that's how also the information came out, and people were sharing that it must be Safaricom. And people, I think even Safaricom is facing several suits with regards to the same. And so the reality is that they have an onus. And as much as it may be deemed that we are on our own, but we are not, there are local laws and international laws that protect us. And that information cannot be shared unless they get a warrant from our courts.
Not really convincing, considering there's a court ruling that said the IBC shouldn't be sworn in, and then number one citizen decides I'm not going to obey the law. So that's really not.
But that's contempt of court. So the onus is now on the Chief Justice to set up the 3-judge bench and ensure that now their application, they can table the next phase of that application.
Yeah, and it goes downhill from there. You bring in the Chief Justice in this one, wow, downhill.
Allow me to emphasize a point the President has alluded to. The DCI, the police, let's say the Kenya police, specifically the DCI, they don't need Safaricom to locate where you are.
Yeah.
They have these gadgets. If they have your number, they want to know where you are, they can do that very easily. In a matter of minutes, they can tell where you are, you know, and this is the point, because yesterday in Parliament, the DCI were claiming we had him, and we transported him to Nairobi, and we made sure he got there safely. They're even claiming they stopped in Narok or somewhere.
Yeah, to
bought
get him
him
a
water and soda, and you know. And the OCS is claiming he was brought in a critical condition. Talam, if you've read the news. So they're pointing fingers at each other. This one is saying they brought him, you know, in this condition.
Yeah.
And these guys are saying, actually, the prime suspect should be the OCS because we delivered him safe and sound. So these are questions that, you know, are already coming up, and we need to find out. For me, there's already like more than what you need to take action
and
start prosecuting, as the president has said. And we need to see that action. And if we, the Kenyan citizens, don't do something, don't push for that, trust me, it will be games and finger pointing and what and all that, and it will just die down like that. So we have to.
I like what he said. To him, it seems that we have enough to persecute. What about from a legal eye? Do we have enough, or are we just dealing with speculation here for now?
The problem of the finger pointing is the question of who is it, you know, because in a criminal matter, it must be beyond reasonable doubt in terms of proof, or there's evidence to show that there's no other person who would have done it with motive. Because also something that Talam points out, that what was his motive? He had no issue, he had no interest to this individual person. He did not know him. He was not the custodian. He
wasn't even there.
Yes, he says he wasn't even there because it was the wee hours of the night. OCSs go home, they sleep.
Yeah.
So he was just informed somebody has been brought. And then there are some minutes later, he's been told someone has died. And so he said that this is, he was under the custody of the DCI. So we've seen various cases where the DCI arrests you, but you're kept in custody on one police station or another. So even the OCS cannot give you bail until there's approval from the DCI.
Correct.
So he says, what's my motive? I didn't know this person. I'm not the one he abused. I had no interest in the matter. So you see, those bring questions of doubt. What was his interest in that particular matter to cause the death of Mr. Ojwang?
Now, we're seeing growing, consistent, rising trend on the crackdown of the civic space, which should be a concern to all of us, because now all of us have become activists by way of just airing our voices and our thoughts on everything that is happening under this administration. So I would dare say each of us has a target on our backs. You're just one tweet away, one word, one statement away from the government coming at you, from the security forces coming at you. Yesterday, I did come across a video that was done by creators in this country, drawn from, of course, creators on Instagram, on X, just saying enough is enough, because it could be me, could be you, and this is a very, very valid concern to all of us. What is the message that we're putting out there, especially knowing that there's a protest that is planned for today? People are going to be out on the streets, that there's a fear that's been put in all of us when all of these things are done. And I think it's very intentional that it's done to make sure that we are afraid to go out there and hold the government, this regime, this administration accountable. From the both of you, I would really just want to know what your message is, and also where are we heading as a country, given that it doesn't seem like this has an end. We thought last year was a thing. Clearly, there's continuity in it.
I would say to the people of Kenya, first of all, the changes on the Kenya Information and Communications Act is something that we need to be very vigilant and stand strongly against. And I hope our courts will be vigilant to protect the rights of freedom of expression. Because, first of all, it aims to surveil Kenyans and grant more powers to the government to be able to crack down on the people.
Correct.
Secondly, we need to watch the bill. Yesterday, I saw somebody creating alarm on X that there is an allocation to the DCI to procure some equipment for social media monitoring. We need to be very alert about that. At the height of a country where we don't have medicines in hospitals, we are seeing
education
is now a problem
for kids to do exams.
Exactly. Then you're telling us you want to spend hundreds of millions on acquiring equipment to crack down on your own people, who you're the symbol of unity to the nation. And most importantly is us we should not allow our voices to be taken away. You know, the beauty of the government that came during Kibaki's time and Raila's time was that it's a government that allowed people to express themselves and speak. I think in the East African region, Kenya boasts as being the nation that can say whatever they want the way they want. And that democracy is, even if you don't get a seat at the table, you're still able to express your frustration and anger and share what ought to be done in this country. And, you know, that has actually brought the change that you're also seeing the CS of Treasury sitting down in barazas and explaining to people, because they have been put to task. Instead of just thumping their chests on high oval offices, they're being brought to sit and explain to the people. And so we cannot allow our voices to be taken away. You know, the Constitution gave public participation, and now more than ever, we're seeing Kenyans coming out and participating in bills, giving their comments, particularly the proposed changes that was aiming to extend term limits. So people have started coming out. Don't let your voices be cramped down. And I say, as a people, we must remember that don't think that this is Mr. Ojwang. Think about it as you, your child, your grandchildren. Because if we do not, it's because of our forefathers who fought for independence that we are able to express freedom and enjoy looking at each other. You know, when you travel out of the country and you face racism and you come back home, you see the beauty of seeing a fellow black skin. You feel the beauty of being with your people, speaking similar language, speaking one as a nation. We want to be able to proudly sing our national anthem because it's a country that is tolerant, is a country that looks and reflects on the challenges that the people are having. I don't think Kenyans are people who shout just because they have to shout. People are shouting because of the frustrations of the economy, working hard, studying, and yet you cannot get jobs. Your children are stuck at home. And an uncaring regime that, when we see waste of resources, flaunting of expensive vehicles, cars, clothes, it doesn't reflect of a country that really sees the heart of the struggles that the people are going through to pay those taxes and trying to use KRA as a weaponized tool to crack down on its people. Because today, if you are an NGO or a civil society organization that raises their voice, the next day KRA is there to crack down on you, freeze all your accounts, because it's being weaponized, and now an attempt to use KRA to be able to access people's personal data. Those are things we must fight against. Those are things we cannot allow. And as people of Kenya, let's not be afraid. This is our country. This is our nation. We don't aim to destroy our country. We aim to bring better accountability. By standing up and raising those voices, we aim to bring positive changes. Because if the doctors hadn't come out strongly, today our interns will continue to suffer and die as they try to offer medical services to the people of Kenya. Instead of honoring those who offer their lives, their service to the country, we bring them down on a day-to-day basis. Let's start having governments that are considerate to build their nation, because of building an educated nation, then you have more resources to use and to help build the country.
We have 2 or 3 more questions for both Hussein Khalid and, of course, who is CEO, Vocal Africa, and, of course, the president of the LSK, One Faith of the Ambo. So stick around for that, and it would be a short change from Phalaris and my part if, considering this whole situation that this country finds itself in, we do not tell you what to do, courtesy from a human rights perspective and, of course, from a legal perspective. If you find yourself in Albert Ojwang's case taken from your home, what should you do? What are the steps you should take? What are the steps your family should take? Because allegedly the father was told to fate ndio uchukue maiti, which is heartbreaking. We will be getting the thoughts of the president of LSK and the CEO, Vocal Africa, on advice on what you should do. Meanwhile, I guess as parents, the only thing we can do is do what the president did before he became the president.
Bora usiue watoto wangu, lakini mimi na wewe tafadhali tuheshimiane.
Mix of music, Capital FM.
Capital Newsbeat.
Treasury shares to table 2025 to 2026 budget in Parliament. Protest plan over blogger Ojwang's death. And human-sized labubu sells for more than 19 million shillings. Good morning. I'm Davis.
Capital Newsbeat.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi is expected to present the 4.24 trillion shillings 2025 to 2026 budget in Parliament this afternoon. The budget comes amid tough economic conditions, public concern over rising living costs, and debate on the controversial Finance Bill 2025. Key allocations are expected in infrastructure, education, health, and security. The budget reading, scheduled for 3 p.m, will also outline funding plans and signal the government's approach to debt and fiscal discipline ahead of the July 1st start of the new financial year. The Treasury Cabinet Secretary, John Mbadi, has at the same time signalled that the government will focus on expanding the tax base, sealing revenue leakages and improving collection efficiency rather than overburdening Kenyans through taxes. The budget, 6% higher than last year's, aims to reduce the fiscal deficit from 5% to 4.5% of the GDP. The budget supports the government's bottom-up economic transformation agenda and is seen as a test of its commitment to fiscal discipline and economic recovery. Kenyans will begin to see if the budget delivers on promises of economic recovery and cost of living relief amid growing pressure on the government to ease the financial strain on households and businesses. Human rights groups and activists are set to stage nationwide protest today demanding justice for blogger Albert Ojwang, who died in police custody. The demonstrators are expected to converge at Nairobi Central Police Station, calling for accountability and an end to the extrajudicial killings. Protesters are urged to bring water, phones and flags, rallying behind the hashtag Ruto must go and occupy everywhere. Ojang's death has sparked public outrage, with rights groups accusing police of the abuse and demanding swift justice. President William Ruto yesterday demanded a thorough probe into Ojang's death.
The Independent Police Oversight Authority must make sure that officers in uniform who engage in criminal activity instead
84984, the same number that you're sending in that answer to, which how is the series standing in the NBA Finals, the playoffs between Pacers and OKC? You're also sending in your requests for throwback jams, and we'll be playing them for you this hour as we find the time to do that. But right now we have to focus on the biggest story of the day, the biggest story of the month, of the year, to be honest with you. It is absolutely heartbreaking, but Albert Ojwang lost his life at the hands of the police. But who was the person who made that decision, that call? Are we just looking at wale watu wa mkono, ama pia chase until we find the boss in charge? All these questions are going to be answered over the course of time, but there are some that can be answered right here, right now. We're joined by CEO of Vocal Africa, Khalid Hussein, who, by the way, was in the mortuary at the morgue, actually went and viewed the body, so we'll be delving into that one. And we're also joined by the LSK president, Faith Odhiambo, who's told you, as Kenyans, y'all better realize today it's Albert. Tomorrow, it could be Felarius, it could be Chico, it could be you. Oh, you don't believe it? Let's take a walk down memory lane.
Now, 1,000 days of Ruto in power and this administration in power has given us this. 120 plus people killed by police, not just by anybody, by police. We have 80 plus abducted or disappeared. We have 60 plus protesters who've been shot dead. Again, it could be you. And all of this with zero accountability now. This is the same administration and regime that came in and promised no extrajudicial killings. It delivered silence, fear, and blood. And maybe if I just add on to this. Yesterday, we did see a statement coming from Fred Matiang'i, who, with all respect, by the way, has no right to comment on this issue.
Moral right?
He has no moral right coming to comment on this issue, considering the things that happened while he held office. And then we had somebody go in the Senate, that is our current CS for Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen, who went and said, we are not having bodies being recovered from River Yala. So, listen, two wrongs don't make it right. And this is a message going directly to you that we cannot invalidate the killing of Kenyans right now by saying that, no, the former administration had it worse than we did. Big shame to you, by the way.
By the way, there was a quick rejoinder from human rights activists who then posted, nahi body lipatakana Rivayala, nahi body. So it's just a lot of claims going left, right, and center, which is heartbreaking and which just goes to fueling that anger that Kenyans have been holding on to for quite some time, an anger that is not helped neither by the rule of law, which is being ignored or broken by criminals who are in charge of ensuring that it's followed, nor by people or organizations that are set to aid us and try and call them out if they make their mistakes. I'm talking about IPOA, which you brought up, Madam President, and I'm just looking at that situation of IPOA, and I would love to hear your thoughts on the standing it has. Is it something we should look for? Is it compromised? What do you make of the state of IPOA right now?
Well, the state of IPOA, in terms of public opinion, it's really suffering. I think it's one of the institutions that people feel ought to be disbanded. From last year, because of failure of investigation, though they gave us a report of the number of investigations that are happening, people want action. People don't want you to give us statistics or pen and paper saying we have looked at this, we have looked at this case. People don't want excuses. People want you to crack down and actually implement the law, because you telling the people of Kenya that, oh, we are being frustrated by this and this person, or we have tabled this. When have they called a press and said, we have done this full investigation, it's stuck at this office, this person has refused to prosecute these cases, and yet this is the full evidence before the people of Kenya? None. And giving reports, while it's good, it doesn't augur well with the people, because people want to have trust in you because of the work that you're doing or the work you have done. They want to see actual action. So unfortunately, they complain about frustration sometimes from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. They complain about not having enough money, frustration with regards to cooperation from the Inspector General of Police. But particularly now, when this are the glare of the entire nation, they shouldn't have those excuses, because this particular case will be a litmus test as to whether they are compromised or not. Because when everyone is demanding answers, and even those duty bearers, like the Inspector General of Police, is being he has promised his full cooperation, and also parliamentarians are also expecting answers. If they cannot give people answers, then they will tick the box and show us that they're either compromised or they are a useless organization.
I like the fact that you started off by saying this is the public's perspective. It sounded like they're on crutches. I can tell you from a public's perspective, they are in the ICU. IPOA is not something that you think of or look to for any help. But what about from the LSK's perspective?
Well,
what's the state of IPOA for you?
Yes, from LSK's perspective, we also feel they're not fast in terms of their responses, unless, you have to make calls persistently to the heads. In terms of their turnaround time, they're quite slow. And so for me, even if you say you're stretched, at least do certain cases and try and complete them and have some record point. Because, I remember when we had the meeting with them, I told them one of my council members was tear-gassed and injured. And to date, her case, nothing has happened from your office. In terms of, we reported, they needed your officer to take even her statement, because at Central Police Station, they had totally refused to take that statement. And we're saying, this is a council member of the Law Society of Kenya. What about the members of the public who don't have a voice, who cannot stand up for themselves, who don't have someone to push for them? Who is standing up for them? Because if this is your turnaround time to a member of the Law Society, what is your turnaround time to the people of Kenya? And for us, we were like, we don't want those stories and excuses. If we agree to work with you, we expect results. If you can't give us results, then you will be part of our list of enemies, because you're either working for the people of Kenya or you're not. There is no middle ground about it.
We don't want any stories or excuses. That is from Faith Odhiambo, president of LSK. What do you make of IPOA from a human rights perspective? I'm sure you mingle with them, you follow what's happening. How would you state their state?
On this point, I totally concur with the president, and it's disappointing because I've been to IPOA. I've gone there with families, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, taken all the evidence, recorded statements. They come back to us, can you get us this and this? We go out there, we look for everything, and we take it back to IPOA. And most of those cases, if not all, let me say most of those cases, there is nothing to show for it. I agree with the president. I was extremely disappointed when I saw the chair of IPOA standing with IG, with Lagat, with Masengeli in the same press statement, talking about a case where those individuals or that institution, the police institution, is the prime suspect. I was like, you don't do that. You can't just do that. You can't be seen, because how do you expect the father now to come to you when you are standing there with the Inspector General of Police? I know Ahmed Isaac from his time at the IBC, so I also have engaged him at one point or another, but it has been disappointing. So far it has been very disappointing, to say the least. On how they continue to handle this matter. So for me, I think what needs to be done, Kenyans need to push back. We have to push back. Freedom of expression, freedom of association. Article 37 is very clear on the right to protest. And this is one sure way we can contribute, because for years and years, we have pushed and pushed institutions to work, but they've refused to work. How many cases has IPOA successfully prosecuted in court? ODPP and all that. But last year we learned something, that if we rise up as a people, if we say no, enough is enough, then the finance bill will be, shut down.
And it happened.
So we need to give this power back, that sovereignty. When the Constitution says sovereignty belongs to the people, and it can be exercised directly or through elected representatives. Elected representatives have failed, and it's about time we exercise that Constitution, and we, exercise that sovereignty as a people. So when people say we have to go to the streets, we were just discussing here with the president, the budget is being read out today.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility that there are overplaying this issue and all, so that they silently just proceed with the budget and all that. So the people have to be empowered. The people have to be told, this is your country. We have no other place to call home. And we have to make home work.
I love
for
that
us.
you said that, because we will come back to that, put a finger in that one, because we're coming back to ask, how do we push back from a legal standpoint? Faith, you'll answer that, what you think we can do as Kenyans. And of course, you, Hussein, you'll tell us from an activist positioning how we can push back. But before we delve into that, sometimes you lose grasp of the situation, and I completely concur that the budget is something that we have to keep an eye on, but we also can't lose light or focus on a life that was lost. And I always say one life is way too many. One too many. All right? So sometimes you need a wake-up call. Sometimes you need to be there to experience it yourself. We couldn't have done that, all of us, but there's someone who's listening who didn't make it to the mortuary, to the morgue, to see the body of Albert Ojwang and see just how real this situation is and how death has come to an innocent man, regardless of what you think of him. So walk us through your experience.
Yeah, so for me, when we received this news, I believe it was on Sunday, when the news broke out, there's this young man, because we've been seeing their posts, and, they posted about the DIG and this scam, apparently, and that he was picked from his home, and he's no more. So the first thing we did is to rush people to the police station, where we found the family, and we've worked with them since. And when we got there, the information was that yes, he was here, but we were told that the body is at Mbagathi Hospital. But we have our sources, so we made a few phone calls. We called the morgue attendants and everything, and we actually confirmed that the body is at the city mortuary, not at Mbagathi. So we went to to the city mortuary, and true to the informants, the body was actually there. And the family was just devastated. The father just started crying, on seeing, and he was like, we were having lunch just the other day. This is my only child. I don't have any other child. How can they do this? And for him, it was shocking, because he just took a bus to come and follow up. He said when he arrived in the morning, he got to Nairobi around 4 a.m. So he waited until 6 a.m. when he could actually go to the police station to ask about his son. And when he got there, he was told it's too early. Come back in an hour or two. He went back around 8 o'clock, and they told him, just hold on. It wasn't until 10 o'clock when he was told to go in to see the OCS. And the OCS walked him to the OCPD. And that's where he was told, your son is no more. And he just couldn't believe it. What do you mean? Because along the way, as he was being driven to Nairobi, he was actually calling and talking to colleagues. And he even called one of his friends and told them, I think I'll be in until Monday when I'm taken to court. So you guys just make sure we have enough cash, to pay for bail. So it is impossible for someone who is already, preparing for court, and then he kills himself. So why was he telling people Risheni bail? He had never been arrested. So he was talking to his friends, and we have those recordings, asking how is a cell, itakuwa aje? So those experiences also perhaps should be considered when we're saying he was injured along the way. Or was he injured at the police station? Because along the way, he had his phone and he was communicating. So these are issues, of course, to be discussed and canvassed during the matter. But from then, it was a bit of frustration, first of all, to even get the police to cooperate. Even to get the postmortem done, we had to really, 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 really push for it to be done in good time. And when we went into the autopsy room, the mood was like very sad. But I also have to commend, as the president said, the pathologists did an excellent job. They did not leave any part of the body untouched. They checked, they opened up everything just to confirm, was he sick, was he unwell? They checked from the heart to the liver to the brain. He was in perfect condition. He was not ailing. He did not have bronchitis. He did not have anything. His body showed like a young man who was taking care of himself. very fine. But the torture marks, the injuries on the soft skin, and on the, they were all over the body. And when I say all over, I mean all over. It is impossible. As the president said, that statement by the police spokesperson that he hit himself, I mean, now it appears as a very serious joke or very clear cover-up. Because if you look at the body, the head, I think at some point they decided we will go with the theory that he hit his head. So then there was over-concentration on the head. After they had already, done all sorts of things all over the body, because the head was swollen. It wasn't the normal sized head. Clearly, even the father, because, he was with his son just a day or two ago. So he could tell that, the lips, the mouth, the nose, the head was swollen. So at some point, I believe they decided this will be the theory. So let's stick to this, and it's just so sad, to see that this is happening during this time and period, and where it's 2025. It's just really, really disappointing.
Taken from his father's home, driven to Nairobi, beaten either along the way or after being in police custody. He was speaking, he's at Central Police. Then he disappears. Timing in terms of when he was checked into the police, whether he left, where he died, so many questions. But one reality, a life has been taken. An innocent Kenyan is no more. He is a father of a young child, recently married. Ask yourself questions, Kenyans. Are you willing to sit there and just be calm about it? Or are you willing to step up and do something? Two things we're about to get an answer to. What can you do following everything that's happened? And what should you do if you find yourself in a similar situation as Albert Ojwang? Hopefully that won't lead to the outcome that we're in. So let's start off with what would you advise someone from a human rights perspective to do?
Okay, so for me, number one, especially if you are active on social media and you do posts and stuff like that, as much as you can, avoid being alone. As much as you can, because we all know ourselves, we all know what we post, we all know how active we are in the public sphere. So if you are active, if you comment, if particularly, you say stuff that can be considered controversial against possibly persons in authority, as much as you can, avoid being alone. Avoid being alone. Number two, at all times, have someone who constantly checks on you. Just call, because you could be with someone and both of you are picked.
Yeah. Correct.
So have someone who would at least twice, in the minimum twice a day, who would just call you, hey, are you okay? Is everything fine? At least twice a day. Have someone who can do that. Number three, our phones. Let's understand the apps that we can use that can help. Within the human rights fraternity, there's an app called the panic button. The panic button is something you can set up your phone such that when you use either, it's up to you.
Yeah.
One button when you press it for long enough, or two buttons when you press them together, it sends a message to a number of other phones that would communicate, I'm in trouble. So understand that, because the moment when you're being arrested or something like that, you may not have a time to open your phone, send a message, and they will see it.
Yeah.
But when you have your phone, people are coming to you. There are apps that you can actually use that you would do, like, maybe just like two buttons. You press them, or one button, you press it long enough, and it sends messages. So let's understand those things. Number four, I would say have a group, a team that you belong to, where there's a lawyer, where you have an activist, someone who can shout about your experiences, someone who can post. Just belong to a group that then can, if anything happens, that message is sent, then they can send the alarm. Because it's one thing to send a message, but then it's another that those people who receive that warning message do something about it. And of course, the fifth, but also most important, just be in contact with different people so that you share information on what is happening. So this is a message. I mean, these are some of the actions we can take if we know we are active, and particularly on social media, because right now that's what they're targeting. They know people have moved from the streets and now it's on social media, so they want to, instill fear in that particular area to silence critics.
Absolutely love that piece of advice. 5 things that you should look at. One, as you pointed out, is have a group of people. I'll start from the back, coming
Never
forward.
be alone.
Then have a group of people you can talk to and whom the message you'll be sending goes out to. Have a group of people who are lawyers and different aspects and whom you can trust. Never be alone is one of them. Ensure that you're with someone. Ensure you have someone who is constantly calling you, because
Yes.
whether you're not alone or otherwise, they can pick you up. Valarius and I disappear, so we always need someone who randomly can reach out. And of course, the panic button thing on the
Yes,
phone
yes.
is something that I intend to put 100%, and I encourage a lot of other people to
Definitely.
put. You've heard from Hussein Khalid about how to prepare and what to do in case you find yourself in that scenario. That is the advice from the human rights activist. Now let's turn our attention to a legal procedure. What should we do if we find ourselves in the shoes of Albert Ojwang?
First of all, before I even talk about that, let me explain something. I find it that it's a worrying trend. Sometimes I think it's a bit deliberate of the abductions done and the kind of arrests, and we're going back to the Kamata Fridays. And my fear is people will become accustomed to it and conditioned. It happens and it is okay. Remember, during the Moi regime, we got accustomed to a point of fear that we
Correct.
believe that it is okay for the head of state to issue directions, or it's okay for the police to come and pick you at any time at your house. It's okay to be locked up from Friday till Monday and even tortured. And that is what is being accustomed to the minds of people. And so I say be outraged and come out in numbers in terms of raising that concern. Do not allow your mind to be conditioned to accept for our nation to go back to the deplorable state we were in before the Constitution 2010. Remember, we have a Bill of Rights that clearly protects our rights from such things happening. Now, the second thing is, if you're Albert, of course, if you're picked up, your family ought to know where you're being taken. Please pick who are the officers who have arrested this person. Get to know, if it's possible, their badge numbers. You want to identify who they are, so that this is critical information that would have even been quite critical now for Mr. Ojwang's case. Because if he knew the officers, of course he knew the numbers and probably you could identify them. And sometimes that's what I believe is social media is a powerful tool to record. If you can go live, go live. You see, the beauty is, even if they delete, you'd have gone live. And the internet, you can never erase something from the internet. So the moment you go live and your location is known and you're able to the picture of those police officers, so they say, oh, turn out that they'll beat you, they do. But the fact is their faces would have been imprinted.
Yes.
Those who picked him up. Go to the police station that they have been taken. Of course, they won't allow you to go with them. Identify and let them tell you where he's being taken, which court he will be produced, what is his offenses, and when who is the complainant of whatever he might have purportedly done, and so that you can follow up. Call your lawyer if you have a lawyer, or reach out for assistance to get a lawyer, so that there'll be someone to be there to follow up and find out. Something that we have been able to do as a legal profession, the moment someone is picked up, we follow up. We know where was he picked up. So I follow up from the OCS where he was picked up. Then I look for, if it's DCI picked till the head office who has picked. So we trail the person from the point of pickup all the way to the place is dropped, and there'll be advocates waiting. The moment they land, there'll be advocates, so that there's no opportunity to do something to that person in between the way, because we'll be trailing you all through. Whatever stops and whatever places you go, we will know and we'll follow up. That's the way you keep each other safe. And so if he would have been able to share with his father, we have stopped here, we've stopped here, we've stopped here, and they had an advocate. Maybe the advocate would have been able to wait the moment they arrive in Nairobi and demand that he wants to see him. And would have raised alarm, and others would have come as myself, because I received an alarm from the advocate of the family that the frustration they were going through Central Police, and even getting to see the body after they had been informed he was dead. And that's why I immediately came through. So sometimes use the media that you have to be able to protect you. We do not have access to sophisticated media, but it's by informing people and sharing and tracking that information the best way we can. Going live, it can save your life, because they also fear identification. They can carry fake IDs here and there, but your face will never lie, and you will be able. Kenyans were able to pick the person that they alleged as the killer of Rex by his picture.
Correct.
And so even the identification on the areas that he was because someone took a stamp of his face and the various pictures pieced together where he was at different places. So that is the way we can sort of try to protect ourselves. But I say is, as Kenyans, those who are not activists, there are other ways that you can still petition and still raise your voice. Petition your member of parliament. If there's something that Gen Zs have taught us, is petition those representatives of yours. Pester them, write to them as much as possible, do open letters to them, so that we can hold them accountable when they come back to the ballot. Petition parliament and send as many petitions as possible. And if it's possible, put them also on social media, the number of petitions, so they cannot lie they have not seen those petitions. Go to court if you want to challenge, and even if it's on public interest litigation and you come together as different groups. I've seen more and more different groups. It's not just the Law Society, because yes, we do as many petitions as possible, but we are just one body. So if you're in spaces that you're not able to reach Law Society, come together as groups and petition and file your case. Write open letters to the head of state. You can, if you can't reach him, put it, ask the media to post it on their media spaces, handles, or put it on your social media, open letters, as many as possible. And also there are different international human rights organizations that Kenya must answer to, that Kenyans are able to write to and petition and raise your voice. The only way, you see, you cannot silence the people by trying to just surveil them on social media. There are different organizations, both local embassies, international organizations, that we can write to petition of the issues that are being swept under the table, particularly human rights issues and human rights concerns. Because for me, the greatest travesty would have is to condition ourselves to accept abductions, to accept arbitrary arrest, to accept killings. You know, one of the Ogola rules arising from the Republic versus Naftali Chege case, the court gave rules on safe and guidelines on safe cells. The question is, we must now ask the IG hard questions. Have you ensured that all the cells meet the criteria as has been set in court? Do we have safe cells in this country? You know, we keep talking about Central Police, we keep talking about Kamkunji, but nothing happens. And in terms of police officers that fail to adhere to human rights, you know, I attended personally, we met the DIGs, the IG, and their regional heads, even all around the region. And I had an opportunity to talk to them, and they were raising their concerns, their rights, their treatment. And I also raised my concerns against them. And, you know, they asserted that they are properly trained according to the Constitution. They know the rights, they know the laws as is. And therefore, there's no excuse for them to say they do not understand the law. It's high time we start holding individual persons, and that's why as the Law Society we said we will hold you personally accountable, will not allow for people to continue hiding, because we have realized the state will always protect those in command responsibility, but apart from following up command responsibility, we'll also follow up individual persons. Good. So that at the end of the day you'll remember, as much as you'll say they're orders from above, the courts will come for you, and the courts are not subject to any orders from above.
A quick one. You did talk about Ogola rule. That one we were talking about yesterday was actually one of the dailies.
Yeah.
But I've been to some of these cells to visit people, just for the record.
Not as a guest of the state.
I've been a guest of the state several times in different cells.
And I can tell you don't want to be a guest of the state at Kamkunji.
Yeah, my younger
Definitely.
times.
That's the worst,
Yeah.
for sure.
Imechapa industrial.
Kamkunji ni mbaya sana.
Okay, so we know that those reforms are not there. All right, you don't have CCTV in the cells. You don't have constant drinking water and food to eat. You don't have medical checks for incoming guests of the state to tell you if they have any underlying issues or conditions, which then the OCS is supposed, according to Ogola, Justice Ogola, is then supposed to take into consideration and ensure that it also plays into keeping this person safe. We don't have these things in there. You go in, unatoa kiatu, again, not from experience. Nimelala cell mara kadhaa.
Kiatu na belt.
Na belt. Ma, hii kitu nikasirisha sana. And the cold is, nilishindwa kulala. And I'm asthmatic. So you don't know how that could have turned out as well, right? But it's not happening. And police brutality is growing, Faith. So do we have, Madam President, any intentions of the LSK for legal and policy reforms that are going to force these expectations to be met, these standards which were set to be executed?
I think we'll look at and we'll start with certain hotspot cells and see how we can seek intervention through the courts to hold individuals accountable, those who are responsible for those cells to be held personally accountable if they don't meet the same. And
that would be someone like the OCS, correct?
But we want to aim for command responsibility. The OCS works under someone.
Correct.
He doesn't deal with the budget, the allocations. And so that's a way that if we can start targeting a few particularly hotspots ones, then we have tangible change. Because I think the only thing that this nation understand, or those in power understand, is either getting court orders against them to execute, and holding personally those who are in command responsibility accountable. That's when we'll actually see change and things happening.
All right, we did hear from her as she walked us through how we can push, if we're not activists, how Kenyans can make a move now and not let this die out. What are you calling Kenyans to do to ensure that something is actually done in this case?
I think Kenyans hold the key. You know, everyone out there, you have a duty, you have a responsibility, and you can't just sit back and watch. As you know, we've all said here, you've said it, you know, today it's Albert, tomorrow it might be you, and you have to be ready for it. And how are you ready for it? By making sure the mechanisms to protect life and, you know, to protect everyone's safety are in place. And this government has, you know, very clearly come out to tell us that they don't listen any other way. And if we go out there and we demand the change, then that's probably the only chance we have to have those changes. And we want to tell Kenyans, and not just Kenyans, everyone out there, you know, in the history of mankind, rights and freedoms are never just handed over on a silver platter. You have to struggle for them. You have to be ready to make those sacrifices. So when people come out and say justice for Albert, you need to be part of that. Because you're exercising it's your constitutional guarantee. People think going to maandamano is a bad thing. As the president said, we are normalizing these things that we're being told by politicians, by the government and all that. It's a constitutional guarantee. Article 37 is very clear that we can protest, we can demonstrate, we can present public petitions, etc. So it is your right. And when they're not listening, you should be out there to force them to listen. So for me, the people hold the key. And if we stand up together, whether it's through the social media platforms, whether it's in court, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, stand up and be counted. This is the time to do it.
Absolutely. You've been hearing from the thoughts of CEO of Vocal Africa, Khalid Hussein, and of course Faith Odhiambo, President LSK. And we thank you for your time. We thank you for the fight that you're putting up. And I'm sorry, Faith, I'm not going to let this one go. He's mentioned what the law. Your thought on the topic that is also should be grabbing headlines. When are the elections supposed to happen? After 5 years in office or in the 5th year? What's the legal interpretation? Are we waiting for 2026 elections or should we wait for 2027?
2027. That's my view on the elections. I know it's a matter that has been filed in court, but from even custom and praxis, it's 2027.
Good.
Well, that's a discussion for another day. Hopefully we'll be able to bring her around, unless of course she's gone to London, courtesy of Kenya Airways. They're opening up a new route the 2nd of July.
Yeah.
So if you don't know about it, now you do. They will be flying to London, not through Heathrow. That's one route, but this one will be taking you to Gatwick Airport, and you'll be doing it 3 times a week, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And by the way, it's all night. That means you land in the morning, you leave at night, you sleep on that one. That's why you need to fly business class, flatbed. And then you sleep and wake up in London, fresh and ready to take on that day. We've been asking you for your stories. In just a second, we'll be right back because we'll be telling you about the travel story that has won someone a hamper. Meanwhile, if you're planning for the weekend...
What's up, y'all? This is Alicia Keys.
It's not just a blog.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
It's the art of living. Capital Lifestyle, where every story is a front row seat to the extraordinary. We don't follow trends. We set them. From the glimmer of